Hi, today I wanted to talk about chocolate chip cookies, and I wanted to also share some of my tips and tricks that I've learned along the way that have helped to make these cookies one of my family's favorite treats. My first tip is that I get all of my equipment ready before I start. I get all of my ingredients ready as well, because if I have everything ready, then I don't have to search for them, and it makes my life a lot easier, and it makes it a lot more fun, I think, when I have everything ready and able to go. So some of the things that I've learned along the way after baking these cookies for over 20 years is that 4 cookie sheets work really good for me. And the size of scoop that I use fills these 4 cookie sheets perfectly where I don't have any leftover dough. So speaking of scoops, this is my favorite scoop. It's a Pampered Chef scoop, and it's about a tablespoon. I love it because it's small and it makes cookies that are bite-sized. I also love it because it's great for filling mini muffin tins. So after I get all of my equipment ready, then I get my ingredients ready. And one of the things you have to do before you make chocolate chip cookies is to get your butter ready. You have to get your butter and put it out on the counter because it needs to become soft. It needs to be room temperature because you cannot make chocolate chip cookies with frozen butter. And speaking of butter, don't use margarine and don't use salted butter, because if you do, you can't control the salt content in your cookies. And I think that cookies taste a lot better if you can actually control the salt in them. So after that, then I also try and use the best ingredients that I can afford. I use, like I said, real butter, unsalted butter. I use real vanilla, not imitation, and then I also buy good quality chocolate chips, because they actually will help improve the taste as well. So make sure when all this is ready that you have, oh, I also need to get an extra bowl, because this bowl is for the dry ingredients. And I put the dry ingredients in there instead of mixing them in the butter and the sugar. And then that way you can just also control the distribution of your salt throughout the flour, and then you don't get chunks or lumps of salt in there. And that actually has happened to me a couple of times, and it's not very fun. So after this, you have this bowl and you've taken your dry ingredients out, then you can use it when everything's combined to put the dough in. And the reason I like to do that is because it saves me in cleanup, because then I can start cleaning up and get everything ready to start baking. And I like to have a clean kitchen when I'm baking. Another thing that I love is the real vanilla. I don't use the imitation vanilla. It does totally affect the taste of your cookies. I know you may not believe me, but I think it does. It makes them taste a lot better. I've also found that actually having all of the ingredients on hand is really essential for making these cookies, because then that way I can just, when a craving strikes, I can just go into my kitchen and make these cookies, and I don't have to go to the store and make a special trip. So I always make sure that I have everything for chocolate chip cookies on hand. Another thing that I do that I learned over the years is that I take the cookies out of the oven after about 7 to 8 minutes, and they're still a little soft in the center. They don't look really done, but take them out of the oven after 7 to 8 minutes and leave them on the cookie sheet to stop, and then let them finish baking while they're on the cookie sheet. And when they've finished baking after they've been on the cookie sheet for about 5 minutes, then I put them on a cooling rack to finish cooling. And when after the cookies have cooled, you need to put them in a covered bowl. Don't put them in a cookie jar, because if you put them in a cookie jar, they could go stale. And when you have finished making these cookies and you have put them in the covered bowl, you need to eat them within 3 to 4 days, because after 3 to 4 days, they start to get a little hard. And in my opinion, hard chocolate chip cookies are not good chocolate chip cookies. So let's just go over what we need to do. We need to make sure that we get all of our equipment and our ingredients ready to go. Then that way we're not searching for things as we're trying to make our cookies. Use unsalted butter and use a scoop, because the scoop makes sure that every cookie is the same size, and then they'll bake evenly and at the same time. Use real vanilla. I promise you won't be disappointed. Have the ingredients on hand for when the craving strikes. And finally, take them out of the oven after 7 to 8 minutes and let them finish baking on the cookie sheet. Chocolate chip cookies are a yummy treat, and I know that your family will love them if you just follow these tips and tricks.